What would you do if one day you looked into a mirror and your face was gone? I thought my trip to the UK would be remembered for my brother's wedding, or maybe for the brutal red-eye flight that nearly broke me, but I had no idea that an airport bathroom would become the place where my life ended, and something else began. I stood in front of the mirror, exhausted, half awake, and then my blood turned to ice. My body was there, my shoulders, my clothes. Everything looked normal, everything except my head. No eyes, no mouth, no face, just a smooth patch of skin where my neck should have been. With shaking hands, I reached up to touch my face, and my fingers passed straight through empty air. And when the stranger behind me finally realized what he was looking at, his scream made me wish I'd never looked up at that mirror. My brother got married in the UK. I thought that was going to be the main takeaway of the trip. Either that or the absurd red-eye flight that I had to take to keep the trip under budget. And neither of those things turned out to be that consequential. It was a nice wedding, sure. And yeah, the trip was a pain in the butt, but it was what happened in the bathroom after the flight that turned out to change my life the most. After finishing my business and washing my hands, I looked up at the wide airport bathroom mirror and saw nothing. I took a step back and blinked a couple of times. I didn't register what was happening at first. It was barely a conscious thought. Something about my mirror image was off. As I twisted and turned, the image clicked. I couldn't see my own head. I inspected my neck. There was a flat patch of skin between my shoulders. I pulled down my t-shirt a bit and I felt something alien. My hand passed straight through my throat, or at least the space where my head ought to be. Turning left and right, I saw it in different angles. I figured it was some kind of digital trick screen. I closed my eyes and I felt around with my hand. My arm passed straight through my neck and face. Nothing but air. I closed my eyes for 10 seconds and I counted out loud. A stall opened a bit further down and a man stepped out. I think we had arrived in the same flight. Opening my eyes, I felt my heart skip a beat. The illusion was still there. No head. I turned to the man. He washed his hand and looked my way with a shrug. Looks fine. No, really. Is there something wrong? His reflection had a head. Mine didn't. How could that be? I still had this hope that it was some kind of trick. He turned to me as he dried his hands and squinted a little. "Oh, wait," he mumbled. "How are you?" His eyes went wide. His pupils turned black. He stumbled backwards, almost tripping on his own feet. Leaning against the wall, he backed out of the bathroom, stammering all the way out the door. I took a couple of steps towards him and he broke into a full-on sprint. I followed and saw a dozen heads turn as this 50-some-year-old man threw his luggage away and beelined it for the exit, screaming at the top of his lungs. Security had to tackle him to the ground as plain white and blue shirts collapsed out of his carry-on. Couple of folks looked my way, but nobody reacted like he did. They didn't see it. Maybe they wouldn't unless I pointed it out like I did to that man. Hell, those first few seconds, I hadn't noticed it myself. It's like I didn't want to see it. It's impossible to believe that your head is missing until you see it. And even then, how can you see it? What was I even seeing through? It didn't make any sense. I could see and blink. I could hear. I could turn my head. If I really concentrated, I could feel my hair touch the tip of my ears, but I couldn't see my head or touch it with my hands. I tried putting on headphones and they clattered to the bathroom floor. The necklace that I got from my mom split right off the smooth patch of skin where my neck was supposed to be. And if I thought really hard about it, I could see through my own eyelids when I had imagined closing my eyes. I had a full-on breakdown in that bathroom. I was there for well over an hour. I tried throwing up in the trash can, but nothing happened. I just stood there making choking noises. I was breathing. My lungs were filling with air. I had a heartbeat. I was thinking. My head still worked. It just wasn't there. It was severed, missing, lost. I went outside to get an Uber. I was almost running, but I couldn't feel the rush of air. I had to get home. I couldn't get my phone to work. It just kept throwing errors. I hadn't even thought about that. I had Face ID. Looking at the screen, it showed the same empty neck that the bathroom mirror did. I couldn't unlock the thing. I ended up getting a cab. I don't remember what I said, but it must have been incomprehensible. The driver had to ask me to repeat myself 2 times. My hands were shaking so badly that it sounded like I was drumming on the car door. I could see it in the rearview mirror, or rather, I couldn't see it. Me no head. The driver was chatting away. I think he noticed that I was having some sort of crisis and he tried to anchor me in the here and now. He talked out loud about whatever came to mind, maybe hoping that I would latch on to something. Problem was, I noticed that he was looking back in the rearview mirror. He was squinting, adjusting his vision as if taking a closer look. I thought about that man in the bathroom and how he had reacted once he had realized that I was headless. He immediately panicked. I couldn't have my driver react like that at 55 miles per hour. I bent down, pretending to tie my shoes. My head should have bumped to the back of the seat in front of me, but there was nothing there. I could move all the way to my neck stump. I felt the cool leather on my patch of neck skin. The driver turned back, looking straight ahead. I tried to act casual, but I was nearly pissing myself. I don't remember a word that he said. My mind was free-falling. There was immediate denial, of course. Maybe I was going insane, and that was a comforting thought. Maybe some kind of rare condition. There is face blindness. Why not head blindness? But it didn't make sense. None of it. No matter my denial, I could physically touch the blank skin between my shoulders. I could scratch it, poke at it. If I pinched it, it stung. When I finally got home, I threw money at the driver and stumbled out of the car. I almost forgot my luggage. I dropped my keys on the gravel path leading up to the door and collapsed to my knees, looking for them. I could barely think straight. I hurried inside, I locked the door, and I ran into the bathroom. Still no head. This was my home and my mirror, and still nothing. I tried drinking a glass of water, but I ended up pouring it all over my clothes. I could feel my mouth, but it just wasn't there. I was so used to the sensation of having a head that I couldn't fathom not having it there. All my intuitive movements have always come from a place of fundamental understanding that no matter what, I'm a human and I'm comprised of a certain set of parts. But now I couldn't make that distinction. Couldn't eat. Couldn't drink. I could wave my hands straight through where my eyes ought to be, and I didn't feel a thing. I stared at my hands for at least 30 minutes, trying to get them as close to my eyes as possible. It felt like I was squinting as if preparing for a rough surface to touch my eyeball, but nothing happened. I just stared and felt nothing. I was experiencing and viewing the world through an organ that was not there. To say that I was freaking out would be an understatement. I was having a full-blown panic attack, the first one that I've ever had. I felt like my heart was trying to choke itself to death. I ended up lying on the floor, riding around trying to find an angle where I could feel my head. I prayed that it would bump against a chair or scratch against the floor. Something, anything. I remember lying there and crying for hours. I could feel the tears on my cheek, but I couldn't wipe them off. Maybe they weren't really there. If I thought about it hard enough, I could imagine that they weren't. After a while, I just lay there on my back, staring at the ceiling. I was completely still, but I thought about my eyes. I was viewing the world from a place where they ought to be, but they weren't. And if I concentrated hard enough, I could change at that point of origin. It's like I could imagine my eyes being further from my body than they ought to be. If I had to describe the sensation, it was like an out-of-body experience. Like I was one flick of the imagination from turning my vision back at myself, seeing what I become. I don't know when I fell asleep, but at some point I did. I woke up a couple of hours later in a haze. I could feel something in my jaw chewing. It's like a distant part of me was eating and drinking. I could feel my stomach growing full. I was awake, but it felt like a dream, like something else was doing it to me through me. If I closed my would-be eyes, I could almost feel the taste. A hot dog, stale bread, ketchup, a lukewarm soda, maybe a cola. My stomach grumbled. It's like my body was rejecting it. Like it wasn't sure that I was really eating or not, causing my stomach acid to perk up. A kind of Schrodinger's meal. I wasn't even sure if it was there or not, and there was no way for me to check. The sensation kept me up. My pulse refused to settle. I was lost inside my thoughts for about a day. I was trying to figure out some kind of logical explanation, but I couldn't come up with anything. I was able to do things that I wasn't supposed to. If I concentrated hard enough, I could make my vision draft. I could look around corners without moving my body. And the ultimate test, seeing through a door. It was hard. There was something inside your mind that stops you from trying the impossible. It's like when you force your eyes open underwater for the first time. It stings and burns and it aches, but you get past it. This felt the same way. I stood still and I forced my vision through, imagining my eyes on the other side of the door. After a couple of minutes, the darkness subsided and I could see my living room from the kitchen through a closed door. Still, the moment I lost my focus, it all snapped back into place. I was so used to having my eyes right above my neck that my mind couldn't help but to default to that space. Maybe that's why I could see it all, just like people ignored my lost head. Maybe my body was experiencing a similar rejection and constructing an experience where there ought to be one. I took a couple of sick days and I closed myself off to the world. I went outside a couple of times to get some groceries and a new phone. I forgot that I couldn't eat. I tried to not pay attention to myself, but I couldn't help it. At some point, I saw a guy on the other side of the street looking my way. Maybe an acquaintance of mine or somebody who thought I was someone else. Either way, he looked a little too close and the reaction was the same as I had seen before. Complete and immediate panic. He ran straight into oncoming traffic trying to get away from me. Thank God the drivers were quick on the brakes. I had to do something. I was becoming a liability. I got one of those cheap styrofoam model heads from a local Goodwill and I dressed it in a wig. I added a face mask, a big pair of sunglasses, and I put on a black hoodie. It took some time to get used to the balance, and I had to adjust my vision with about an inch to get past the sunglasses, but it was frightening just how easy it came to me. It's like my senses were becoming more malleable. All the while, I kept getting the sensation of being full. Something was eating and it was going straight into me. At times, I would get hiccups as something cold rolled down my gullet. Some part of me was drinking. Coming back home, I tried to put together all that I had learned. I still had a head in some capacity. It just wasn't there. That meant that it had to be somewhere else. It was still eating and drinking, meaning that someone or something was using it in my stead or at the very least sustaining it. Not a comforting thought. People weren't expecting to see someone without a head. It was something so unreal and outlandish that their minds rejected it. All I had to do was make them look a little closer and they would just break. With my fake styrofoam hat along with some duct tape, I could pass for a normal person for a bit, at least long enough for people not to panic. Something abnormal had happened to me, and I noticed it for the first time in the airport bathroom. That meant that whatever happened to me must have taken place prior to that moment. And since nobody was screaming in fear at my brother's wedding, I had a window somewhere between saying goodbye and looking in the bathroom mirror. But what happened? Where? I decided that I couldn't do this alone. I needed some kind of anchor. So I called on a friend of mine, Eric. We met through work, but that was about 2 jobs ago. We kept in touch and hung out on the weekends mostly, but we had had our moments. He was a good guy, could be a bit of a geek at times, but as honest as they come. Felt weird to call him. I couldn't pinpoint where my ear was, so I ended up talking to him on speakerphone. It took 4 rings for him to pick up figures. It looked like an unknown number. "Eric, it's me," I said. "I could use your help." "Sorry, I can't hear you. You sound weird." I closed my eyes and realigned. My mouth was off. I had to anchor it to where it ought to be. I tried to imagine it in my mind's eye, the shape of my lips as I talked. "Is that better?" "Oh, I guess so. Yeah. What's up, Eric?" Something's come up and I could use your help." It took him a couple of seconds, but he could hear that I wasn't messing around.